In tonight's primetime focus, bailing out an autocrat. It's not every day you see the sitting vice president campaign for a foreign authoritarian leader, but that's what's going to happen this Tuesday when J.D. Vance heads to Hungary to campaign for Viktor Orban in the country's parliamentary elections. A far-right strongman who's led his country for 16 years and whose economic policies caused inflation to nearly hit 25% at one point. And then there's the Russia of it all. Orban has met with Vladimir Putin at least a dozen times. He flew to Moscow while holding the EU's rotating presidency to meet with a man the ICC, International Criminal Court, has indicted for war crimes. The propaganda is so blatant that Orban's government has been putting up posters like these with text that read, "Let's not let Zelensky have the last laugh." But after 16 years in power, the end might be coming for Orban. Most reliable polls show his party is facing an uphill battle against the opposition candidate. So you might be asking, why is Vance doing this? Why is our government trying to elect a far-right strongman while we're on the precipice of disaster with Iran? Our next guest might have the answer. Joining us now is Anne Applebaum, staff writer for The Atlantic. And you wrote a piece about the Hungary election for The Atlantic and called it the first post-reality political campaign. So can you walk us through what you mean when you write that Viktor Orban is waging, quote, cognitive warfare on a new scale?
Let me begin answering that question by saying who Orban is and what he represents to J.D. Vance. Orban is sometimes described by people admiringly, people around Trump, as Trump before Trump. So he's a democratically elected leader who took over the institutions of the Hungarian state one by one, very slowly, and using both the power of the state and also money of oligarchs close to him. He took over the media, 90% of the media. He took over the judiciary. He took over the bureaucracy. And he's managed to continually change the constitution and manipulate elections and politics in Hungary so that he's stayed in power for 16 years. And in the recent years, he's done that with a lot of help from Russia, from cheap Russian oil, and also help from Russian-style propaganda. Now he's trying to stay in power by creating a completely false story. In other words, he's not talking about Hungary, which, as you point out, had been a lot of economic trouble. He's not talking about Hungary's failing healthcare system. He's talking about Ukraine, and he's telling Hungarians that Ukraine is going to invade them or attack them or sabotage them. It's crazy. It's not related to reality, but it's really him trying to create a false picture of the world in order to get people to ignore the disaster he's created at home and vote for him.
And I'm kind of confused about that line of rhetoric, in part because it seems like Ukraine has its hands full fighting against Russia. Why would people believe this narrative that Ukraine is going to invade Hungary? Like, why does that narrative have any purchase in Hungary right now?
It's an interesting question, and we'll see if it does.
Okay.
I think it's because the Orban has run out of other enemies. The old ones that he used migrants for a long time, but there aren't any migrants in Hungary. He used the threat of somehow LGBT gender changes as a threat. That's really not working anymore. And so he's focused. I mean, you have to imagine all the resources of the Hungarian state, 95% of the media, television, all the newspapers, all of his advertising. He's focused Hungarians on this idea that they might be at war, and he's used this very violent videos showing a Hungarian soldier being murdered. He's constantly talking about threat, because this is his understanding of how you win elections: is you distract people, you make them afraid, and then they'll ignore reality and vote for you. I mean, maybe it's not working. Yes, exactly. I mean, it could be the reason why the Hungarian opposition seems to be way ahead.
To Catherine's point, it sounds very familiar, I'm sure, to folks at home. A lot of what you just described about, attacks on LGBTQ people not really working so well anymore, immigration or attacks on migrants maybe not working so well anymore. So what do you think the Trump administration, though, has learned from watching Orban?
they've learned a tremendous amount from Orban, and some of them have said so. I mean, Steve Bannon has talked about Orban as a model. Mainly what they've learned is that you can be democratically elected. Remember, Hungary was an electoral democracy. It still has elections. That's why we're having an election on April the 12th. But even from the position of leading the country, you can capture the institutions. You can take over the bureaucracy. You can take over the judiciary. You can use your friends in business to dominate media. And I think those are all tactics that the Trump administration admires and would like to bring to the United States, and is indeed already bringing them. And so that's the reason why Vance is going to Budapest, because they see Orban as a kind of model, as a colleague, as someone they admire. And if he loses, that they see that as bad for their own authoritarian project.
So if he does lose on April 12th, how much of the damage that he has inflicted over the years that he has been in office in Hungary is repairable, or how much of this is unfixable going forward for Hungarians?
It's a good question. I mean, there will certainly be a very difficult situation for the next prime minister if it's Peter Magyar, who's the leader of the opposition, in that he will be facing a hostile bureaucracy, a hostile media, a business community about between 20 and 30% of which is one way or the other dependent on Fidesz, which is Orban's political party, and he will have to reverse and unpick that. I mean, there's some good news in that there have been a lot of leaks in this election campaign that seem to be coming from the Hungarian state. So it even feels like in Budapest, I was there a couple of weeks ago, people were saying even inside the government, inside the party machine, people are sick and tired of Orban and they want something different. So maybe he'll have that advantage. But your question is exactly the right one. I mean, yes, it will take years to unpick the damage that's been done.
All right. Anne Applebaum, thank you so much for that insight. I really appreciate it, as always.